A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. For the believers, a sign that their hearts are compliant with the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is when they are God conscious and are filled with awe when they hear the revelations of the Quran. But the question remains, when will our hearts truly soften towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's remembrance? When will this time come? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala further need to do to ensure that they are not hardened to the extent that we may become transgressors? This rhetoric question was posed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself in Surah Al-Hadid in ayat number 16. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also gives us a solution to avoid this disease of the heart and to allow us to soften it by first purifying it. This practice of tazkiyah-in-nafs is mentioned in the Quran. The one who will take admonition and purify himself shall be successful, who remembers the name of his Rabb and prays. Therefore, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words, zikr and salah are the key ingredients to purify our hearts. But this will not be possible without inculcating ikhlas in both practices. Another aspect of ikhlas is when we make a sincere intention to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for no other reason but to seek His Muhabbat and His Razaa. It is mentioned in a Hadith Qudsi that Ikhlas is a secret within Allah's secret. He puts it in the hearts of whomever so He pleases. Hazrat Fuzail bin Ayaz, a renowned awliya, once said that Riya is when we leave an amal for the people. For example, we leave the practice of reading tasbih as we feel pressured by the people that surround us and want to gain their approval. Shirk, according to him, is when we practice an amal for the people. For example, we have an iftar celebration for the sake of the people, as we fear what they may say if we do not host them. Ikhlas is the opposite of these amals and hence saves us from them. It makes us realize that we live and die only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that everything that we do or refrain from doing should only be for His sake and not for the creation. And that is the reason why the harshest thing on the nafs is ikhlas, because it is pure and unadulterated. Hazrat Mahul once said that a person who does ibadat with ikhlas for 40 days, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put wisdom in his heart and tongue. So how will I know that I have ikhlas in my heart? Hazrat Zunoon Misri says that 3 things tell us if we have ikhlas in our hearts. Number 1, when people praise or insult us, it does not affect us. 2, when a person forgets after he has performed good deeds. Take the example of Musa alayhi salam when he sat under the tree extremely fatigued and helped the women who didn't even ask for his help. He didn't see the amal as an act of good deed for them. Instead, he saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through an act of ihsan. Subhanallah. And 3, when we perform acts for no other reason but to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah mentions those people who desire only the transitory things of life and those who desire the life of the hereafter, and how He subhanahu wa ta'ala deals with them accordingly. At the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also reminds us of the Arif, who would give away his life to seek the pleasure of Allah. Such is the high status of the Arif, who sacrifices his life for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. He desires neither the dunya nor the akhirah. He desires only the Qurb of Subhanahu and his Muhabbat, and does not want anything back in return from the Creator or the creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the Arif in the Quran. We feed you for the sake of Allah alone. We seek from you neither reward nor thanks. When good deeds are done only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do they become an act of ihsan? As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, could the reward for goodness be anything but goodness? But to get to that level of ihsan, we must first establish ikhlas within ourselves. We cannot do ihsan without having ikhlas. And this is the fundamental point on ikhlas being raised in Surah Muzzammil. That the true worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is obedience to Him out of love, which only comes with ikhlas or sincerity. This Ramzan, let us ponder on the status of the Arif in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let us make a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow our hearts to open up so that we can at least try to become a mukhlis. Let us try and achieve that with acts of ihsan only if they are laced with the sweetness of ikhlas. If you have liked this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and do share it with your loved ones. The link is in the feed below. Wishing you all a very blessed Ramzan, and may the light of Al-Muzzammil shine upon you and your loved ones, bringing barakah and peace. Ameen.